I never thought my 70th birthday would be the day I finally broke. 70 years on this earth, 12 of them spent as a widow, raising 2 daughters who had grown into strangers I barely recognized. But life has a way of pushing you to your limits exactly when you least expect it. That morning began like any other. I made my coffee, strong, black, no sugar, and carried it to the sunroom of my modest Portland home. Rain tapped gently against the windows, typical Oregon weather even in May. I expected a quiet day, perhaps a call from Jennifer or Stephanie later. Maybe they'd remember this year. Maybe they wouldn't. What I didn't expect was the notification that popped up on my phone as I sipped my coffee. A credit card alert, $4,892 charged to the Mauna Kea Beach Hotel in Hawaii. I froze, coffee mug halfway to my lips. I hadn't been to Hawaii since Richard and I visited for our 30th anniversary 15 years ago, and I certainly hadn't charged nearly $5,000 to any hotel. With trembling fingers, I opened my banking app. There it was, a series of charges, first-class airline tickets, luxury resort, spa services, all on my emergency credit card, the one I kept hidden in the false bottom of my jewelry box for absolute emergencies only. My daughters knew about that card. I'd mentioned it once, years ago, when Jennifer was going through her divorce, and I wanted her to know there was a safety net if things got truly desperate. As realization dawned, my phone pinged again. This time, it was an Instagram notification. Stephanie had posted a new photo. With shaking hands, I opened the app. There they were. My 2 daughters, tanned and smiling, cocktails raised against a backdrop of turquoise ocean and swaying palm trees. The caption read, "Sisters Getaway. Sometimes you just need to treat yourself. Hawaii, no regrets. Living our best life." Posted 20 minutes ago. While I sat alone on my 70th birthday, they were living it up in Hawaii on my stolen credit card. I set down my coffee cup so carefully, it made no sound. Inside my chest, something hardened like concrete setting around my heart. 12 years of giving and giving and giving some more. 12 years of "Mom, can I borrow?" and "Mom, I just need a little help with," and "Mom, you're not using that money anyway." 12 years of daughters who saw me as a walking ATM rather than a mother who deserved respect. I moved on autopilot to my bedroom, opened the jewelry box with its cleverly disguised false bottom. Empty. They hadn't even tried to hide their theft. My hands weren't shaking anymore as I picked up my phone and called the bank. "I need to report a stolen credit card," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "and I need to freeze all my accounts immediately." "Certainly, Mrs. Collins," replied the customer service representative. "Can you verify your identity?" As I answered the security questions, another notification popped up on my screen. Jennifer posting this time. A selfie in a hotel spa robe, cucumber slices ready for her eyes. Day 1 of total relaxation. Self-care deserved. The word echoed in my mind as I completed the fraud report. My daughters thought they deserved a luxury vacation funded by their mother's stolen credit card on my birthday, which they hadn't even acknowledged. "Is there anything else we can help you with today, Mrs. Collins?" the representative asked. "Actually, yes," I replied, an idea forming. "I'd like to speak with someone about my investment portfolio. It's time I made some changes." By noon, I had blocked all access to my accounts, canceled every credit card, and set in motion a complete overhaul of my financial arrangements. By 1 o'clock, I'd called my attorney, Gordon, who'd helped me quietly build my real estate empire after Richard died. "Barbara, this is theft," Gordon said gravely after I explained the situation. "We should file a police report." "Not yet," I replied. "Let's wait for the hotel to contact them about payment first." "You're sure about this approach?" Gordon sounded concerned. "It's going to create quite a scene." "I'm 70 years old today, Gordon," I said quietly. "I've spent 12 years being a doormat for my daughters. I think I'm entitled to a little scene." He sighed. "Happy birthday, by the way. I'm sorry it's turned out this way." "Don't be," I replied, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. "I think this might be exactly what we all need." After ending the call with Gordon, I walked slowly through my house, the house where I'd raised my girls, where Richard and I had built our life together. Photos lined the hallway. Jennifer's graduation, Stephanie's wedding, family Christmases when the girls were young and still looked at me with love rather than calculation. When had it changed? When had I become a resource rather than a mother. Perhaps it started after Richard died. The girls were in their 30s then, both struggling with careers and relationships. I'd wanted to help, to ease their burdens during our collective grief. Small loans became larger ones. Occasional requests became regular expectations. And somewhere along the way, I'd lost their respect without realizing it was slipping away. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Unknown number with a Hawaii area code. Mrs. Collins? A man's voice, professionally pleasant. This is Marcus Reeves, manager at the Mauna Kea Beach Hotel. We're having an issue with the credit card on file for your daughter's stay. I imagine you are, I replied calmly. The card has been declined, and we've been unable to process an alternative payment method. Your daughters insist there must be a mistake. There's no mistake, Mr. Reeves. That credit card was stolen from my home. I've reported it as fraud. A pause. See? Mrs. Collins, are you saying you did not authorize your daughters to use this card? I did not, nor did I authorize them to book a luxury vacation while forgetting my 70th birthday, which happens to be today. Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its customer service polish. I'm very sorry to hear that, ma'am, and happy birthday. If I may ask, how would you like us to proceed? The outstanding balance is substantial. I closed my eyes, picturing my daughters' faces when they realized their free vacation had just collapsed. Standard hotel policy for non-payment, Mr. Reeves, whatever that may be. That would involve security and potentially local authorities, Mrs. Collins. I understand, and I did, completely. After hanging up, I sat in Richard's old armchair, the one I could never bear to give away. What would you do? I whispered to his memory. My practical, principled husband, who had always taught our girls about honesty and responsibility, lessons they had apparently forgotten. My phone pinged with another social media notification. Stephanie had posted again, a photo of her and Jennifer by the infinity pool, sunglasses on, champagne flutes in hand. Best day ever. I set down my phone and gazed out at the rainy Portland afternoon. A strange calm had settled over me, replacing the hurt and anger. For 12 years, I had enabled their behavior, afraid of losing their love if I stopped being their financial safety net. I had allowed them to diminish me, to forget the woman I was beyond mom or ATM. Well, they were about to meet that woman, the teacher who had put herself through night school while raising 2 children, the widow who had taken Richard's life insurance and, through careful study and shrewd investments, turned it into a real estate portfolio worth millions. The mother who had given everything and received little in return. I picked up my phone and texted Gordon. It's done. The hotel is proceeding with their policy for non-payment. What happens next will be up to my daughters. Then I turned off my phone, made a fresh cup of coffee, and sat in peaceful silence as rain tapped against the windows. Tomorrow would bring chaos, recriminations, perhaps even the permanent fracturing of our family. But tonight, on my 70th birthday, I gave myself the gift of boundaries, and it felt like freedom. I slept soundly that night for the first time in years. No midnight worry about Jennifer's latest financial crisis or Stephanie's emotional manipulation. Just peaceful darkness and the steady drum of rain on my roof. When I woke, I made my usual coffee and took a moment to center myself with my morning devotional. The passage seemed particularly fitting. Proverbs 13:24. Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. I'd failed at that, the careful discipline part. I'd given and forgiven without consequences, watching my daughters grow more entitled with each passing year. What kind of love was that? Not the kind that helped them become their best selves. With a deep breath, I turned my phone back on. It immediately exploded with notifications. 12 missed calls from Jennifer, 17 from Stephanie, 34 text messages ranging from confusion to anger to panic, and most tellingly, 3 voicemails from numbers in Hawaii. The hotel manager, I presumed, and possibly local authorities. I listened to the first voicemail from Jennifer at 6:18 a.m. Pacific Time, which would have been 3:18 a.m. in Hawaii. Mom, what the hell is going on? The hotel says our card is declined and they're threatening to call the police. Call me back immediately. The second, from Stephanie at 6:42 a.m. Mom, this isn't funny. We're stuck here with no way to pay, and the manager is saying the card was reported stolen. Fix this now. The third, From Jennifer again at 7:15 a.m., her voice now tearful. "Mom, please, they made us leave our room. We're sitting in the lobby with security watching us. They've called the police. Please, Mom, help us. No happy birthday. No explanation for taking my card. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just demands for rescue, as always." My phone rang in my hand. "Gordon. Barbara. Have you seen the news?" he asked without preamble. "What news?" "Your daughters have been detained by hotel security in Hawaii. Apparently, they made quite a scene. Someone filmed it and posted it online. It's going viral." My stomach tightened. How bad? Let's just say Jennifer and Stephanie won't be winning any Guests of the Year awards. The hotel is pressing charges for theft of services, and there's talk of potential credit card fraud charges depending on what you want to do. I closed my eyes, imagining the scene. My perfectly polished daughters, used to getting their way through charm or manipulation, faced with actual consequences. "Send me the link." Moments later, my phone pinged with Gordon's message. I opened it to find a TikTok video already at 200,000 views and climbing. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. The footage was shaky, clearly shot by another hotel guest. Jennifer and Stephanie stood in the elegant lobby of the Mauna Kea, still in their designer resort wear, faces contorted with indignation. Jennifer was shouting at the unflappable manager. "Do you know who we are? Our mother is Barbara Collins. She has accounts worth millions. This is clearly a bank error." Stephanie, always the more dramatic of the two, was openly crying, mascara streaming down her face. "Please, you don't understand. We can't go to jail. We're respectable people. This is all a misunderstanding." The manager remained professional but firm. "I've spoken with Mrs. Collins personally, and she has confirmed that you are not authorized to use her credit card. The police are on their way to take statements." The camera panned to show two uniformed security guards standing nearby, then back to my daughters as Jennifer's composure completely shattered. "This is ridiculous. Call her again. She's probably confused. She's old." The video ended there, but the damage was done. In the comments, people were already speculating about the entitled rich daughters who had stolen from their elderly mother. My phone rang again, a Hawaii number. "Mrs. Collins? This is Detective Alana Kealoha with the Hawaii County Police Department. I'm calling regarding an incident involving your daughters, Jennifer Pierce and Stephanie Collins Ward." "Yes, Detective," I replied, my voice steady. "I've been expecting your call. Mrs. Collins, your daughters are currently detained following a complaint from the Mauna Kea Beach Hotel. They used a credit card reported as stolen to charge approximately $12,000 in services and accommodations." Her tone was professional, but kind. "They claim there's been a misunderstanding, that you allowed them to use your card for this trip." "There's no misunderstanding, Detective Kealoha. They took my emergency credit card from a hidden location in my home without my knowledge or permission. Yesterday was my 70th birthday, which they didn't acknowledge. Instead, I discovered they were in Hawaii through social media posts." A pause. "I see. And would you like to press charges for the theft of your credit card, Mrs. Collins?" The question hung in the air. Part of me, the part that had been taken advantage of for 12 years, wanted to say yes, but another part, the mother who remembered rocking two small girls to sleep, hesitated. "What would happen if I did?" "Credit card theft between family members is complicated," she explained. "But given the amount and the circumstances, they could potentially face felony charges. First-time offenders often receive probation rather than jail time, but it would mean a criminal record." I thought of Jennifer's marketing career, Stephanie's interior design business. A criminal record would devastate them professionally. But hadn't that been their choice when they stole from me? "I need time to consider," I said finally. "But regardless of my decision about pressing charges, I will not be paying for their hotel stay or return flights." "Understood," the detective replied. "They'll need to address the hotel charges directly, and they'll need to arrange their own transportation home. Would you like to speak with them?" I took a deep breath. "Not yet. Please tell them I'll contact them when I'm ready." After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring out at the clearing sky. The storm had passed, leaving Portland gleaming and fresh. Inside my chest, though, the storm was just beginning. My doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, my neighbor Grace stood there holding a small cake with a single candle. "Happy belated birthday," she said with a warm smile. "I remembered it was yesterday, but didn't want to intrude. Thought you might be celebrating with your girls." The simple kindness broke something in me. Tears welled up as I invited her in and explained what had happened. Grace, a retired nurse and widow herself, listened without judgment. "Oh, Barbara," she sighed when I finished. "What a terrible position they've put you in." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "Part of me wants them to face real consequences for once, but they're still my daughters." Grace set down her teacup. "You know, my Frank used to say something that stuck with me. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the music they've chosen to play." I smiled sadly. Richard would have said something similar. He was always big on accountability. What would he advise now? I closed my eyes, picturing Richard's face, his kind eyes that could turn steely when principles were at stake. He'd say that real love means wanting what's best for someone long-term, not what's easiest for them right now. Grace nodded. "And what's best for Jennifer and Stephanie? Another bailout? Or finally understanding that actions have consequences?" As she left an hour later, I felt clearer. I called Gordon and outlined my decision, then emailed detailed instructions to my financial team. Finally, I texted Detective Kealoha. "I've made my decision. Please inform my daughters that I'll speak with them when they return to Portland. They will need to handle their current situation themselves." My phone immediately exploded with calls and texts from both daughters. I silenced it, slipped it into a drawer, and went out to my garden. The roses Richard had planted needed pruning, cutting back the dead wood to allow for new growth. As I worked, carefully removing what was no longer serving the plant, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in years. Sometimes love required difficult choices. Sometimes growth required pain. My daughters were about to learn that lesson. And perhaps, at 70, I was finally learning it too. 3 days passed before I heard the car doors slam in my driveway. I'd been expecting them. Gordon had informed me that Jennifer and Stephanie had booked economy flights back to Portland after spending a night in a budget motel near the Kona airport. They'd had to borrow money from Jennifer's ex-husband to afford even that. I remained seated in Richard's armchair, my hands folded calmly in my lap as the doorbell rang, followed immediately by angry pounding. "Mom, open the door! We know you're in there!" Jennifer's voice sharp with indignation. I took my time walking to the entrance. When I opened the door, the sight was almost shocking. My always impeccable daughters looked utterly disheveled. Their designer clothes were wrinkled, their hair unwashed, dark circles underscoring bloodshot eyes. Stephanie's face was blotchy from crying. "How could you do this to us?" Jennifer demanded, pushing past me into the foyer. "Do you have any idea what we've been through?" Stephanie followed, dragging a luxury suitcase with a broken wheel. "It was humiliating. They treated us like criminals." I closed the door quietly and turned to face them. "Please lower your voices. If you'd like to have a civilized conversation, we can sit in the living room." "Civilized?" Jennifer's voice rose higher. "You had us detained by security. There are videos of us all over the internet. My boss called me this morning. My clients are seeing this." "And mine," Stephanie added. "My phone is exploding with texts. My reputation is ruined." I regarded them steadily. "Are you finished?" Something in my tone, a new firmness they'd never heard before, made them both pause. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the sofa. "Now." To my mild surprise, they complied, perching on the edge of my floral couch like chastened schoolgirls. I remained standing. "Yesterday was my 70th birthday," I began. "Mom, we were going to call," Stephanie started. "I'm speaking," I interrupted, my voice quiet but unyielding. "Yesterday was my 70th birthday. I spent it alone, while discovering that my daughters had stolen my emergency credit card to fund a luxury vacation they clearly couldn't afford." "We didn't steal," Jennifer tried. "Did you ask permission to take my card from its hiding place?" I asked. She fell silent. "Did you plan to replace the money before I noticed?" Stephanie stared at the floor. "Then yes, you stole from me, on my birthday, and then posted photos of yourselves enjoying the fruits of that theft on social media for me to see." "We were going to pay you back," Jennifer mumbled. "With what money?" I asked. "Jennifer, you've borrowed over $80,000 from me in the past 5 years. Stephanie, you're at $63,000. Neither of you has repaid a dime. Your credit cards are maxed out. You live beyond your means while treating me like your personal bank." Their shocked faces told me everything. They had no idea I'd been keeping such careful track. "How do you know about our credit cards?" Stephanie asked. Because I'm not the doddering old woman you apparently think I am, I replied. I've monitored your financial situations carefully each time you've asked for money. I know about Jennifer's online gambling habit and Stephanie's secret apartment in Seattle where she meets her married boyfriend. Both women paled. These were secrets they thought well hidden. Mom, you don't understand, Jennifer began, her voice taking on the cajoling tone she'd used since childhood when in trouble. We've been under so much stress. We just needed a break. And I needed daughters who remembered my birthday, I cut in. I needed daughters who respected me enough not to steal from me. I needed daughters who valued me as more than an ATM. Tears welled in Stephanie's eyes. Always the more emotional one, she'd weaponized her tears for years. We do value you, Mom. We love you. This was just a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to return a borrowed sweater, I said. This was a deliberate choice to take what wasn't yours. And now you're facing the consequences of that choice. Jennifer's eyes narrowed. What exactly does that mean? I walked to my desk and retrieved 3 folders, handing one to each daughter and keeping the third. It means changes, effective immediately. They opened the folders skeptically. Then their expressions shifted to disbelief as they read the documents inside. You're cutting us off? Jennifer's voice rose in panic. You can't do this. I've already done it, I replied calmly. All automatic payments to your accounts have been stopped. The trust fund distributions you've relied on are now frozen. My will and estate plans have been amended. And yes, I absolutely can do this. It's my money. But how will we pay our mortgages? Our car loans? Stephanie looked stricken. The same way other adults do, with the money you earn from working. I opened my own folder. Which brings me to the next point. If you wish to restore your standing in my will and financial plans, there are conditions. Conditions? Jennifer repeated incredulously. First, you will both enroll in financial counseling. I've provided information on 3 reputable advisors. I pointed to a page in their folders. Second, you will repay every cent you've borrowed from me over the past 12 years. I've included detailed accounting of all transactions. That's impossible, Stephanie protested. We don't have that kind of money. Then you'll set up payment plans. I continued undeterred. Third, you will each commit to 50 hours of community service working with elderly victims of financial abuse. I've included information on organizations that can accommodate your schedules. Jennifer stood up, her face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous. We made one mistake. One? I raised an eyebrow. Shall I enumerate every emergency loan, every manipulation, every time you've treated me like a resource rather than your mother? Because I have those records too. She sank back onto the sofa. Fourth, I continued, you will attend weekly family therapy sessions with me for a minimum of 6 months. I've already spoken with Dr. Matthews, who specializes in adult family dynamics. Mom, Stephanie pleaded, be reasonable. We can't possibly do all this. You can. You simply don't want to. I closed my folder. Which brings me to my final point. These conditions are non-negotiable. Meet them, and we can work toward rebuilding our relationship. Refuse, and you will remain cut off financially. Permanently. Jennifer's expression hardened. And if we go to the media? Tell them how you abandoned us in Hawaii? How you're financially abusing us now? I had anticipated this. Jennifer's ultimate weapon. The threat of public exposure. I met her gaze steadily. Then I would be forced to release the complete financial records, showing how you've systematically taken advantage of me for years, along with proof of how your Hawaii trip was funded. I don't think that's a court of public opinion you want to face, Jennifer. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Stephanie broke it with a sob. I don't understand. You've always helped us before. You've never been like this. No, I agreed softly. I haven't, and that was my mistake, one I'm correcting now. I stood up, signaling that our conversation was over. You have 1 week to decide if you're willing to meet my conditions. Until then, I think it's best if we don't communicate. You're kicking us out? Jennifer looked incredulous. Where are we supposed to go? To your homes, I presume, the ones I've been helping you pay for. I walked to the door and opened it. I'll expect your decision next Friday. They gathered their belongings in stunned silence. As they passed me at the door, Stephanie paused, her face tear-streaked. Did you ever really love us, Mom? She asked in a small voice. The question struck me like a physical blow. Even in her manipulation, there was a genuine hurt there that I couldn't ignore. I have always loved you both, I said quietly. Enough to finally stop enabling behavior that was harming you. That's what real love looks like sometimes. After they left, I sank into Richard's chair, emotionally drained. On the side table sat the last photo taken of him before the cancer took hold. Strong, principled Richard with his kind eyes and firm resolve. Was I too harsh? I asked his image. Or not harsh enough? No answer came, of course. But as I sat in the quiet house, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. For the first time since Richard died, I had stood firmly in my own truth. Whether my daughters could accept that truth remained to be seen. My phone pinged with a text from Gordon. How did it go? I typed back simply, "The ball is in their court now." Then I set my phone aside, picked up my novel, and allowed myself to focus on my own needs for the first time in a very long time. For 3 days, silence. No calls, no texts, no melodramatic appearances on my doorstep. My daughters were either strategizing their next move or genuinely processing what had happened. Either way, the quiet gave me space to breathe, to remember who I was beyond mom and financial safety net. I spent one entire day in my garden, tending the roses Richard had planted and the vegetable beds I'd added after his death. There was something deeply satisfying about having my hands in the soil, nurturing growth while removing what didn't belong. My back ached pleasantly by evening, a reminder that at 70, I was still capable, still strong. On day 4, Grace came over with fresh scones and concern in her eyes. "The video of your daughters is all over the local news now," she said as I poured tea. Channel 8 did a segment on entitled adult children, and they didn't name names, but the blurred footage was clearly Jennifer and Stephanie. I sighed. I was afraid of that. "How are you holding up?" I considered the question carefully. Better than expected, actually. There's a certain relief in finally drawing a line. Grace nodded. "I saw Stephanie at Whole Foods yesterday. She pretended not to see me, but she looked different, less polished, more human somehow." "Human is good," I murmured. "Human means feeling things, confronting things." "She was buying ramen noodles and discount bread," Grace added with a hint of satisfaction. Not her usual champagne taste. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of maternal concern. "They'll be all right. Both girls earn good incomes. They just spend beyond their means. Because someone has always been there to catch them," Grace pointed out. "You're giving them a chance to develop their own wings, Barbara. It's a gift, even if they don't see it that way yet." After Grace left, I checked my email for the first time in days. Among the usual newsletters and notifications was a message from Dr. Matthews, the family therapist I'd contacted. "Mrs. Collins, I wanted to inform you that your daughter Jennifer called to inquire about my services and availability. She did not schedule an appointment, but seemed to be gathering information. I thought you might find this relevant to your family situation. Yours, Dr. Matthews." A small step, perhaps, but significant. Jennifer, my proud, controlling firstborn, was at least investigating one of my conditions. Later that afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a floral delivery, a modest arrangement of daisies and carnations with a card that read simply, "I'm sorry, Stephanie." No elaborate justifications, no manipulative declarations of being devastated or ruined. Just 2 words that, in their simplicity, carried more weight than her usual emotional outpourings. I placed the flowers on my kitchen table, touching the petals gently. A beginning, perhaps. My phone rang as I was preparing dinner, a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Collins? This is Martin Reynolds from KPTV News. We're doing a segment on financial abuse of elderly parents, and your daughter's situation in Hawaii has come to our attention. We'd like to get your side of the story." My heart raced. This was exactly what I'd hoped to avoid. Public exposure that would humiliate all of us. "Mr. Reynolds, I appreciate your interest, but I have no comment. This is a private family matter. Our viewers might benefit from hearing how you're standing up for yourself," he pressed. "You could help other parents in similar situations." The thought gave me pause. How many other mothers and fathers were being quietly exploited by adult children who should have been on their own feet? "I understand the potential value," I said carefully, "but I won't discuss my daughters specifically. If you'd like to interview me generally about establishing healthy financial boundaries with adult children, I might consider that, under the condition that my family situation remains private." "That could work," he said, sounding surprised by my counteroffer. "Would you be comfortable sharing your professional background as part of the segment?" I hesitated. My real estate investments had always been private, known only to Gordon and my financial team. but perhaps it was time to step fully into who I'd become. Yes, I decided. I'm a retired teacher who built a successful real estate investment portfolio. That would be relevant to the discussion. We arranged a time for the interview, and after hanging up, I felt a curious mixture of anxiety and liberation. For years, I'd downplayed my financial acumen, allowing my daughters to see me as just their aging mother who needed their guidance. Stepping into public view as a successful businesswoman would shatter that perception permanently. That evening, as I prepared for bed, my phone chimed with a text from Jennifer. Saw that Stephanie sent flowers. Typical. She always tries to look like the good daughter. I've scheduled an appointment with the financial counselor you recommended. Tuesday at 2 p.m. No apology, but action, which, from Jennifer, was probably more meaningful anyway. I texted back simply, "I'm glad to hear it. Thank you for letting me know." 3 dots appeared as she typed a response, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "The Hawaii thing was wrong. We shouldn't have taken your card." Coming from Jennifer, this was practically prostrating herself in remorse. I waited, sensing there was more. The dots appeared again. "Did you really amend your will?" And there it was, the financial concern underlying her tentative contrition. I considered how to respond, then typed, "Yes, all previous arrangements have been changed, pending your decisions about the conditions I outlined." A long pause before her reply. "I'll be at the financial counselor on Tuesday." Progress, albeit motivated by self-interest. But with Jennifer, I'd take what I could get. The next morning, I met with Gordon to prepare for the news interview. As we reviewed talking points about financial independence and healthy boundaries, he gave me an appraising look. "You seem different, Barbara. Stronger." I smiled. "I feel different. Like I've finally stepped into myself after years of shrinking to accommodate others' expectations." "It suits you," he said. "Richard would be proud." The mention of my late husband brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I wish he could see this. He always told me I was too soft with the girls. Gordon nodded. He was right. But you're correcting course now, and that's what matters. As I drove home, I passed Jennifer's sleek downtown condo building and felt a pang of worry. Was I being too harsh? Should I have given them more warning before cutting financial ties? But then I remembered their faces in that viral video, entitled, "Incredulous that actions might have consequences." They were in their 40s, for heaven's sake. If not now, when would they learn to stand on their own feet? My phone rang through the car's speaker. Stephanie. "Mom." Her voice was subdued, lacking its usual dramatic flair. "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" "I'm driving, but yes, I can talk." "I've been thinking about everything you said." She paused. "You're right. About all of it. The way we've treated you. The money, even forgetting your birthday. It's inexcusable." I waited, letting her continue without interruption. "I've made an appointment with that financial counselor, and I've looked into the community service option. There's a senior center downtown that needs volunteers." Her voice caught slightly. "And I've been thinking about what you said, about valuing you as more than an ATM. I don't think I realized how much we've taken you for granted until everything stopped. Thank you for telling me this, Stephanie." "I'm really sorry, Mom." The words came out in a rush, not just for Hawaii, but for years of treating you like you existed to solve our problems. I want to do better. For the first time since this all began, I felt a genuine warmth toward my daughter, not the automatic maternal love I'd always had, but appreciation for her willingness to reflect and change. "That means a lot to me," I said softly. "This isn't about punishment, Stephanie. It's about building healthier relationships for all of us." "I know," she replied. "Jennifer's struggling more with it. She's angry and embarrassed, but I think she'll come around. In her own time." I agreed. Everyone processes things differently. After we hung up, I found myself smiling. The road ahead would be bumpy. Decades of patterns couldn't be changed overnight. But for the first time in years, I saw the possibility of authentic connection with my daughters, built on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened the wooden box where I kept Richard's letters. On our wedding day, he'd given me a note to read when times were difficult. I'd turned to it often after his death, but not for many years now. His handwriting, bold and sure, leapt off the yellowed page. "My dearest Barbara, if you're reading this, you're facing something that feels insurmountable. Remember this: you are stronger than any circumstance. You have a spine of steel beneath your gentle heart. Trust yourself. Stand firm. I believe in you. Always have. Always will. All my love, Richard. I traced his signature with my fingertip, feeling his presence as clearly as if he sat beside me. I'm finally doing it, I whispered, standing firm. Better late than never, right? In the quiet of my study, I could almost hear his laugh, warm and approving. The following weeks brought changes I could never have anticipated. My simple news interview snowballed into a series of media appearances, 3 radio shows, a podcast about women's financial independence, and even a segment on a national morning program filmed via Zoom from my living room. Boundary Barbara had struck a cultural nerve. Emails flooded in from women sharing similar stories, mothers who had financially supported adult children for decades, widows who had discovered their own strength after loss, grandmothers who feared setting boundaries would cost them family relationships. You've tapped into something significant, Gordon observed during one of our now weekly meetings. There's a whole generation of women who were taught to put everyone else first, who are now realizing they deserve better. The publisher he'd mentioned was seriously pursuing a book deal, a practical guide for women over 60 reclaiming their financial and personal independence. The advance they offered was substantial enough to make me blink twice when I saw the figure. This is outside my expertise, Gordon admitted. You should consider getting a literary agent. My head spun with the surreality of it all. At 70, I was suddenly embarking on a career I'd never imagined. Through it all, I maintained my conditions for Jennifer and Stephanie. Both were seeing the financial counselor regularly. Stephanie had completed her first 10 hours at the senior center and, surprisingly, reported that she found the work rewarding. Jennifer had grudgingly attended 2 sessions with Dr. Matthews, though she refused to discuss what transpired there. Our weekly family therapy sessions were tense affairs at first. Jennifer arrived with arms crossed and responses clipped, while Stephanie oscillated between genuine remorse and occasional backsliding into victim mode. I maintained firm boundaries while acknowledging my own role in enabling their behavior for years. Financial dynamics in families are rarely one-sided, Dr. Matthews observed during our 3rd session. Barbara, you received something from this arrangement too, or it wouldn't have persisted so long. The observation stung, but I recognized its truth. I wanted their love, I admitted. I feared being alone, being irrelevant to them. The financial support gave me a guaranteed role in their lives. A role that came at significant cost to you, Dr. Matthews noted. And to us, Stephanie added unexpectedly. We never had to grow up, not really. There was always Mom to fall back on. Jennifer remained silent, but I caught a flicker of recognition in her eyes. By our 5th session, small breakthroughs were occurring. Jennifer actually acknowledged that stealing my credit card had been wrong, not just misguided or poorly timed, but fundamentally wrong. Stephanie admitted that she'd cultivated a victim mentality to avoid taking responsibility for her choices, and I confronted my own enabling behavior without excusing theirs. I've been thinking about Dad a lot, Jennifer said during one particularly productive session, about how different he was with money. He never just handed it over when we asked. Your father believed in earning what you received, I agreed. I lost sight of that after he died. I thought giving you everything would keep you close. Instead, it taught us you were someone to use rather than respect, Stephanie said quietly. I'm not proud of who I became in that dynamic. These moments of insight were interspersed with setbacks. Jennifer missed a therapy session without explanation. Stephanie called one night in tears over a bounced check, begging for just a small loan before catching herself mid-request. I received a furious text from Jennifer after her ex-husband mentioned seeing me on television. But slowly, incrementally, our relationships were evolving. Meanwhile, my unexpected public platform continued to grow. I launched a modest website with Gordon's help, offering resources for women in similar situations. A local community college asked if I would teach a workshop on financial literacy for seniors. The book deal was finalized, with a tight deadline for the manuscript. At times, the pace felt overwhelming. I was still a 70-year-old woman who valued her quiet routines: morning coffee with devotional readings, afternoons in the garden, evenings with a good book. Now my schedule included media appearances, manuscript consultations, and an increasing number of emails requesting advice. You don't have to say yes to everything, Grace reminded me over tea one afternoon. This isn't about becoming a celebrity. It's about sharing wisdom you've hard-earned. Her counsel was timely. I began setting boundaries not just with my daughters, but with the growing demands on my time. I declined a reality TV show's overture. The very thought made me laugh out loud, and limited my public appearances to those that allowed me to share substantive advice rather than sensationalize my story. 6 weeks after the Hawaii incident, I returned home from a meeting with my new literary agent to find Jennifer's car in my driveway. This wasn't one of our scheduled therapy days, and she hadn't called first, a breach of the new protocols we'd established. I found her sitting on my porch swing, an envelope in her hands. "I should have called," she said immediately, acknowledging the boundary crossing. "I'm sorry. This felt too important for a text." Curious, I sat beside her. "What is it?" She handed me the envelope. "My first repayment. It's not much, $5,000, but it's a start." I opened it to find a cashier's check inside. "Jennifer, I'm impressed. How did you manage this?" "I sold my Peloton and some designer bags," she admitted. "And I've taken on some freelance projects outside my regular work. The financial counselor helped me create a repayment plan that's actually realistic." The effort this represented, not just financially, but psychologically, was significant. Jennifer, who defined herself through status symbols and appearances, had voluntarily sold luxury items to make amends. "Thank you," I said simply. "This means a lot." She nodded, looking out at the garden rather than at me. "I saw you on that morning show. You were really good, articulate, strong." Coming from Jennifer, this was high praise indeed. "Dr. Matthews has been helping me understand some things," she continued, still not meeting my eyes, "about why I've been so angry about your new public persona. It's not just about embarrassment or how it might affect my image." "What is it about?" I asked gently. "I think I've been jealous," she admitted, the words clearly difficult for her. "All these people are suddenly seeing Mom, Barbara, as this wise, accomplished woman with important things to say. And I've spent years dismissing you, treating you like you were less than me somehow. It's uncomfortable to realize how wrong I've been." The raw honesty of her admission touched me deeply. "We've all made mistakes, Jennifer. What matters is where we go from here. That's what Dr. Matthews says too." She finally turned to face me. "I'm not going to pretend this is easy for me. I still struggle with the financial restrictions, with the therapy, with all of it. But I'm trying." "I know you are," I acknowledged, "and I'm proud of you for that." She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. Jennifer had always hated crying, viewing it as weakness. "The thing is, Mom, I actually need your help with something. But not money," she added quickly. "Advice." "What kind of advice?" "My company is expanding into financial literacy programs for corporate clients. Given your new expertise in this area," she hesitated, "I thought maybe you could consult on the curriculum development. As a paid professional, not as my mother doing me a favor." The offer represented a fundamental shift, Jennifer seeing me as someone with valuable knowledge, seeking a collegial relationship rather than a maternal rescue. It felt like the first fragile bridge across the chasm that had formed between us. "I'd be happy to discuss it," I said carefully, though my schedule has become quite full lately. A small smile touched her lips. "So I've heard. Boundary Barbara is in high demand." I groaned at the nickname. "Please don't call me that." "Too late. Stephanie and I have already ordered you a coffee mug with it printed on the side. Happy belated birthday." The gesture, half joke and half peace offering, made me laugh despite myself. "Thank you, I think." As Jennifer left, promising to email me details about the potential consulting work, I felt a cautious optimism. The path forward with my daughters would never be simple or straight, but for the first time in years, it felt like we were at least walking in the same direction. That evening, I worked on my book outline at the desk in my study. The working title, The Invisible Woman's Revolution, Reclaiming Your Power After 60, felt both presumptuous and strangely right. Who was I to write such a book? And yet, who better than someone who had lived its central journey? My phone chimed with a text from Stephanie. "Just finished my shift at the senior center. Met a woman who saw you on TV and quotes, 'Boundary Barbara like scripture.' Slightly weird to hear my mom quoted, but also kind of cool. Heading to financial counseling now. Progress report. I've stuck to my budget for 3 weeks straight." I smiled at the message, appreciating both the update and the casual, healthier tone of our communication. No dramatics, no manipulation, just honest sharing. As I returned to my outline, I realized I was crafting not just a book, but a legacy. The woman I had become at 70, the woman I was still becoming, might actually help others find their own strength sooner than I had found mine. Richard would have loved that. He had always believed I had more to offer the world than I allowed myself to give. Better late than never, right? I whispered to his memory, feeling his presence as clearly as if he sat beside me. The night was quiet, my house peaceful. Outside, spring was yielding to early summer, new growth evident in my garden. Inside, I was experiencing my own unexpected blooming, a 70th year renaissance I could never have anticipated. And for the first time in a very long time, I was genuinely excited to see what tomorrow might bring. 3 months after the Hawaii incident, my world had transformed in ways I still struggled to comprehend. The manuscript for my book was progressing steadily. I'd taught 2 community college workshops on financial literacy for women over 60, with a 3rd scheduled for the following month. My website received hundreds of daily visitors seeking advice on establishing boundaries with adult children. Most surprisingly, Jennifer's offer of consulting work had evolved into a legitimate professional collaboration. Her marketing firm was developing financial wellness programs for corporate clients, and my input was genuinely valued, not as her mother, but as Barbara Collins, financial independence expert. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. If someone had told me 6 months ago that I'd be professionally collaborating with my mother, I'd have thought they were insane, Jennifer remarked during one of our strategy sessions. Yet, here we are. Life takes unexpected turns, I agreed, reviewing the presentation materials she'd created. Our personal relationship remained a work in progress. Jennifer attended therapy and financial counseling as required, made regular payments toward her debt to me, and maintained appropriate boundaries in our interactions. But there remained a guardedness between us, a caution born from years of unhealthy patterns not easily undone. With Stephanie, the transformation seemed more complete. She had embraced her volunteer work at the senior center with unexpected enthusiasm, even organizing a financial literacy workshop for residents using materials from my website. "These women have amazing stories, Mom," she told me over coffee one morning. One was a WB2 codebreaker who never told her family until she was 90. Another started a successful business at 65 after her husband died. They're incredible, but so many of them struggle financially because they weren't taught to manage money. The passion in her voice was new, Stephanie finding purpose beyond her own needs and desires. "The director asked if you might consider speaking to the residents," she added hesitantly. "No pressure, of course. I know how busy you've become." "I'd be happy to," I replied, touched by her consideration of my schedule, another new development in our relationship. As I prepared for that presentation the following week, sorting through materials in my study, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Collins? This is Diane Lowell from Horizon Publishing. I'm calling about your upcoming book." My stomach tightened. Gordon had warned me that publishers sometimes change direction unexpectedly. "Yes. What can I do for you?" "I've replaced Miranda as your editor. She's taken maternity leave earlier than expected. I've reviewed your manuscript draft, and I'd like to discuss a significant opportunity." I relaxed slightly. "What kind of opportunity?" "Good Morning America is planning a special segment on women over 60 reinventing themselves. They're interested in featuring your story and the book. It would mean accelerating our publication timeline, but the exposure would be tremendous." The prospect was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. Local media attention was one thing, national television was quite another. "When would this happen?" I asked, trying to sound calmer than I felt. 3 weeks from now. They'd fly you to New York. The segment would air the week before your book releases." My mind raced. "I'll need to discuss this with my family and my agent before committing." "Of course," Diane replied smoothly. "But if possible, we'd need your decision by tomorrow. These opportunities move quickly." After hanging up, I sat motionless, contemplating how completely my life had changed. From invisible mother and grandmother to potential national television guest, all because I'd finally stood up for myself after decades of acquiescence. I called Gordon, who was enthusiastically supportive. "This is exactly the platform your message deserves, Barbara. The publisher will handle all the logistics. You just need to be your authentic self." Next, I texted both daughters, asking them to meet me for dinner that evening if possible. To my surprise, both immediately agreed. The restaurant I chose was midway between our homes, not too expensive to strain my daughter's new budgets, but nice enough for an important conversation. I arrived early, watching through the window as they approached from different directions, meeting on the sidewalk with a brief, somewhat awkward hug before entering. "Everything okay, Mom?" Stephanie asked as they settled across from me. "Your text sounded serious." I explained about the Good Morning America offer, watching their reactions carefully. Stephanie's eyes widened with excitement, while Jennifer's expression remained carefully neutral. "That's amazing!" Stephanie exclaimed. "National television! You'll reach so many people!" Jennifer took a measured sip of water. "It's certainly a significant opportunity. How do you feel about it?" The question surprised me, Jennifer asking about my feelings rather than centering her own reaction. Another small sign of growth. Honestly, terrified, I admitted, but also called in a way. The responses I've received from women in similar situations have been so powerful. If sharing my story helps others find their voice sooner than I found mine, that feels worthwhile. Jennifer nodded slowly. "And how would you present what happened with us? The Hawaii situation?" The question cut to the heart of the matter. "I've been careful in all my public comments to focus on principles, not specific details about our family," I reminded her. I would continue that approach. "But the Hawaii incident is what started everything," Jennifer pressed. "It's what made you Boundary Barbara. They'll want that story." She wasn't wrong. The producer would certainly push for the most dramatic elements of my journey. "I won't share anything that would identify or humiliate either of you," I promised. "This isn't about exposing our family struggles publicly. It's about helping other women find their strength." Stephanie reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I trust you, Mom. And honestly, I've earned whatever embarrassment might come my way. What we did was wrong." Jennifer sighed. "I agree, though it's not easy to admit." She straightened her shoulders. "If you want to do this, you should. Just, please be thoughtful about how you frame things." The maturity of their responses moved me deeply. 3 months ago, Jennifer would have threatened legal action to prevent me from speaking publicly. Stephanie would have dissolved into dramatic tears about being humiliated. Now, they were considering my opportunity and offering measured support. "Thank you both," I said sincerely. "This means more than you know." "So you'll do it?" Stephanie asked. I nodded, decision crystallizing. "Yes, I think I will." As we ate dinner, the conversation shifted to other topics. Stephanie's volunteer work, Jennifer's corporate project, my upcoming presentation at the senior center. For perhaps the first time in adulthood, we spoke as 3 women with separate lives and interests, not just as mother and daughters locked in patterns of giving and taking. After dinner, as we walked to our cars, Jennifer hung back slightly. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How did you know?" She looked uncharacteristically vulnerable in the soft evening light. "How did you know when it was time to finally say enough? To change everything?" I considered the question carefully. "I didn't know exactly. There was just a moment, seeing those Hawaii photos on my 70th birthday, when something shifted inside me. All the accumulated hurts and dismissals suddenly felt too heavy to carry anymore." I smiled sadly. I wish I could say it was a carefully considered decision, but honestly, it was more like a dam breaking. Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about that a lot in therapy, about why it took something so dramatic for things to change." She hesitated. "I'm not good at saying this, but I'm sorry we pushed you to that breaking point." The simple apology, delivered without qualification or expectation, felt like a gift. "Thank you, Jennifer. That means a great deal." As they drove away, I remained in the parking lot, watching their taillights disappear in opposite directions. The evening had confirmed my decision. If my journey from doormat to self-respect could help other women find their voice, then the Good Morning America appearance was a risk worth taking. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. My publisher arranged media training sessions via Zoom. My manuscript underwent final edits. Gordon helped me establish boundaries with the television producers about what I would and wouldn't discuss regarding my family. The day before my flight to New York, I visited the senior center where Stephanie volunteered. The presentation room was filled beyond capacity. Residents, staff, and even family members crowded in to hear Boundary Barbara speak. As I shared practical advice about financial independence after 60, I noticed Stephanie at the back of the room, watching with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. When the Q&A session began, an elderly woman in the front row raised her hand. "I've been following your story, Mrs. Collins," she said, her voice quavering slightly. "My question isn't about finances, it's about forgiveness. How did you forgive your daughters after what they did?" The room fell silent. I glanced at Stephanie, whose face had flushed deep red. Forgiveness is a process, not an event, I answered carefully. For me, it required seeing genuine change, not just hearing apologies. My daughters have worked hard to rebuild trust through consistent actions, not just words. I paused, making eye contact with Stephanie. And I've had to forgive myself too, for enabling behavior that wasn't healthy for any of us. The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. My son hasn't spoken to me in 5 years because I finally stopped paying his mortgage. Sometimes I wonder if standing up for myself was worth losing him. You didn't lose him, I replied gently. You lost the illusion of a relationship that was actually about financial dependency, not genuine connection. Real relationships can withstand boundaries. In fact, they require them to be healthy. After the presentation, as residents lined up to speak with me individually, I noticed Stephanie deep in conversation with the woman who'd asked about forgiveness. They spoke intently for several minutes before embracing. Later, as we walked to our cars, I asked about their conversation. Her son cut her off completely when she stopped financially supporting him, Stephanie explained. She's been blaming herself, thinking she made the wrong choice. I told her about our journey, how Mom setting boundaries was the best thing that could have happened to us, even though we didn't see it that way at first. You shared our story? I was surprised by her openness. Stephanie nodded. The real story, not the sanitized version. How Jennifer and I stole your credit card and then had the audacity to be angry when you reported it stolen. How we've spent 3 months in therapy and financial counseling, learning to stand on our own feet. How it's been the hardest, most important work of our adult lives. Her willingness to own the unflattering truth touched me deeply. That was brave. It was honest, she corrected. And she needed to hear that sometimes the path to healing isn't easy or straight, that her son might come around eventually like we did, once he learns to make his own way. As we reached our cars, Stephanie surprised me with a tight hug. I'm proud of you, Mom. For New York, for the book, for all of it. She pulled back, her expression serious, but mostly for finally teaching us the lesson we should have learned years ago. That night, as I packed for New York, I reflected on how completely my life had transformed in just 3 months. From a forgotten 70th birthday to a national television appearance, from enabling unhealthy dynamics to establishing respectful boundaries, from invisibility to voice. The journey hadn't been easy, and it certainly wasn't complete. But standing in my bedroom, suitcase open on the bed that had once felt too empty after Richard's death, I felt a profound sense of rightness, of purpose. Well, this certainly wasn't in our retirement plan, I said aloud to Richard's memory. But I think you'd approve. And somewhere deep inside, I felt his answer, not in words, but in the steady certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do, 70 years old, and my real life was just beginning. New York City sprawled beneath my hotel window, a glittering tapestry of lights against the evening sky. My publisher had arranged accommodations at a midtown hotel, sleek and modern in a way that made my Portland home seem quaint by comparison. Tomorrow morning, I would appear on national television to discuss my book and the journey that had inspired it. The thought still seemed surreal. My phone chimed with a text from Jennifer. Just confirming. Car service will pick you up at 5:30 a.m. Hair and makeup at the studio by 6:15. Deep breaths. You've got this. Jennifer had surprised me by offering to liaise with the television producers, leveraging her marketing expertise to ensure I was properly prepared. It's what I do professionally, Mom, she'd explained. I might as well put these skills to use for you instead of just my clients. Her support felt like another milestone in our healing relationship. Jennifer using her strengths to help, rather than manipulate. I replied with a simple, thank you, all set here, then returned to reviewing the talking points my publisher had prepared. The segment would last approximately 7 minutes, a blink in real time, but an eternity under bright studio lights with millions watching. The hotel phone rang, the concierge announcing a delivery. Moments later, a knock at my door revealed a bellhop with a small gift bag. Special delivery for Mrs. Collins, he announced. Inside the bag was a simple silver bracelet with a single charm, a miniature ladder. The accompanying note read, "For the woman who's showing others how to climb, we're proud of you. Love, S&J." The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought unexpected tears. 3 months ago, my daughters had stolen my credit card and abandoned me on my birthday. Today, they were sending symbolic gifts of support before my television appearance. The transformation seemed almost miraculous, yet I knew it had been earned through painful work on all our parts. I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist, finding comfort in this tangible connection to home as I faced the most public moment of my life. Sleep proved elusive that night. I alternated between reviewing my talking points and attempting meditation techniques I'd learned from a YouTube video Stephanie had recommended. By the time my alarm sounded at 4:45 a.m., I felt simultaneously exhausted and electrified. The morning proceeded in a blur of activity. The car service, the backstage hustle of the television studio, the makeup chair where a young woman applied more products to my face than I'd used in the previous decade combined. "You have amazing bone structure," she commented, blending something shimmery across my cheekbones. "Thank you," I replied, trying not to flinch as she wielded an eyelash curler with alarming proximity to my eyeball. "Though I think most of the credit goes to genetics and 70 years of gravity." She laughed. "Well, whatever it is, you're rocking it. My grandmother watches you online, by the way. She calls you her financial fairy godmother." The comment caught me off guard. "Online? Your website videos. She says you've helped her stand up to my uncle, who's been bleeding her dry for years." She applied a final touch of lipstick. "So thanks for that. She seems happier now." Before I could respond, a production assistant appeared with a clipboard. "Mrs. Collins, you're on in 15 minutes. Let's get you mic'd up." As I was led to the side of the set, I caught my reflection in a monitor, a stylish, confident-looking woman who barely resembled the Barbara Collins who had sat alone on her 70th birthday. The exterior transformation was striking, but the internal shift was what truly mattered, the reclaiming of my voice, my boundaries, my sense of self. 3 minutes, the production assistant announced, adjusting my microphone pack. "Any questions before you go on?" I shook my head, focusing on controlling my breathing as the anchors wrapped up a segment about summer travel destinations. The female anchor, Melissa Chen, would be conducting my interview. She glanced my way with a reassuring smile as a makeup artist touched up her already perfect appearance during the commercial break. 30 seconds. I closed my eyes briefly, centering myself. When I opened them, the red light on the camera illuminated, and Melissa turned to face the lens with practiced ease. Our next guest knows firsthand about the challenges many women face as they age, becoming invisible, being taken for granted, and sometimes even financially exploited by those closest to them. Her new book, The Invisible Woman's Revolution: Reclaiming Your Power After 60, has sparked a national conversation about boundaries and self-worth. Please welcome Barbara Collins. I walked onto the set with as much poise as I could muster, smiling as I took my seat opposite Melissa. "Barbara, thank you for joining us this morning," she began warmly. "Thank you for having me," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Your journey to becoming what social media has dubbed Boundary Barbara began with a painful family situation," Melissa continued. "Without delving into private details, can you share what finally prompted you to make such a dramatic change in your relationships?" I touched the ladder charm on my bracelet, drawing strength from this connection to Jennifer and Stephanie. "It was my 70th birthday," I began. "A day when I found myself alone, discovering that family members had taken my credit card without permission to fund a luxury vacation. That must have been devastating," Melissa prompted. "It was the culmination of years of enabling unhealthy patterns," I explained. "I'd allowed myself to be treated as a financial resource rather than a person deserving of respect. That birthday was simply the moment when I finally said, 'Enough.' And that decision changed everything," Melissa noted. "It did, though not instantly or easily," I clarified. "Setting boundaries isn't about punishing others. It's about honoring yourself enough to require respectful treatment. In my case, it meant establishing clear conditions for rebuilding relationships on healthier terms." The interview flowed more naturally than I'd expected. Melissa asked about the practical steps women could take to reclaim their financial independence, about the emotional challenges of standing up to family members, about the response to my message from women in similar situations. "One of the most powerful aspects of your story," she observed, "is that you were 70 when you made this transformation. What would you say to women who feel it's too late to change their circumstances?" The question resonated deeply. I would tell them that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. Every morning we wake up is another chance to rewrite our story. I leaned forward slightly, speaking now not to Melissa, but to the invisible viewers I imagined beyond the cameras. Age isn't a limitation. It's an asset. We have wisdom, perspective, and strength we didn't possess in our younger years. Why not use those gifts to create the life we truly deserve? Beautiful, Melissa said softly. Then, to the camera, Barbara Collins's book, The Invisible Woman's Revolution, releases next week. Thank you for sharing your inspiring journey with us this morning. Thank you for the opportunity, I replied as the segment concluded. The lights dimmed slightly as commercials began. Melissa removed her microphone, shaking my hand warmly. That was wonderful, Barbara. Authentic and powerful. Your book is going to help a lot of women. I hope so, I replied, still slightly dazed by the surreality of it all. As I was escorted backstage, the production assistant handed me my phone. It's been lighting up non-stop during your segment, she noted. 27 text messages, 43 emails, notifications from social media accounts I barely used, and a voicemail from Gordon. Barbara, you were magnificent. Call me as soon as you can. The publisher is already talking about a second printing before the first is even released. I was ushered to a waiting car that would return me to the hotel. As we navigated Manhattan's morning traffic, I scrolled through my messages. Grace, neighbors, church friends, former colleagues, all watching, all offering congratulations. And then a text from an unknown number that made my heart stutter. Mrs. Collins, you don't know me, but I'm the hotel manager from Hawaii. Just wanted to say I watched you this morning and was moved by how you've transformed a difficult situation into something meaningful. Wishing you continued success. Marcus Reeves, the manager who had called security on my daughters 3 months ago, had somehow found my number to offer encouragement. The completeness of the circle nearly overwhelmed me. Back in my hotel room, I finally called my daughters on a video chat. They appeared together on my screen, apparently watching from Jennifer's apartment. Mom, you were amazing, Stephanie exclaimed. So poised, so articulate. I got goosebumps. Jennifer, more measured as always, nodded in agreement. You knocked it out of the park, clear, compelling, and you managed to address what happened without exposing us. Thank you for that. The bracelet was perfect, I told them, holding up my wrist so they could see I was wearing it. It gave me strength at just the right moment. That was Stephanie's idea, Jennifer admitted, though I found the jeweler. Teamwork, I observed, smiling at this evidence of their improving relationship. We've been talking, Stephanie said, glancing at her sister, about what happens when the 6-month probation period ends next month. My heart tightened. We'd never explicitly discussed what would happen after they completed my conditions, whether financial support would resume, whether the trust distributions would be unfrozen. And, I prompted gently. Jennifer straightened her shoulders. We think the current arrangement should continue. The financial counseling has been illuminating. I've actually started building an emergency fund for the first time in my adult life. And I've been living within my means for 3 consecutive months, Stephanie added proudly. It's been hard, but also, I don't know, clarifying about what really matters. What about the trust distributions, I asked. Those quarterly payments had been a significant part of their income for years. The sisters exchanged glances. We've discussed it, Jennifer said carefully. And we think those funds might be better directed elsewhere for now. Stephanie nodded. Maybe toward your foundation idea. The one for helping elderly victims of financial abuse. We could help structure it, maybe even volunteer some time. The suggestion, coming from them rather than imposed by me, left me momentarily speechless. Are you sure? Those distributions are substantial. We're sure, Jennifer confirmed. We need to stand completely on our own feet. No safety nets, no bailouts. It's the only way we'll truly change. I studied their faces on my screen, searching for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. Instead, I saw only resolution and a new maturity that both broke and mended my heart. I'm proud of you both, I said finally. This decision couldn't have been easy. Easier than you might think, Stephanie replied with a small smile. Turns out there's something empowering about paying your own way. Who knew? After we disconnected, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, processing the magnitude of the morning's events. The television appearance, the manager's unexpected message, my daughter's decision to continue their financial independence. 3 months ago, I had been invisible, a convenient resource, easily overlooked. Today, I was visible not only to millions of television viewers, but more importantly, to my own family. And they, in turn, were becoming visible to me in new ways, not as the entitled adults who had taken advantage of my generosity, but as women finding their own path to integrity and self-sufficiency. My phone rang again. Diane from the publishing house. "Barbara, congratulations on a stellar interview. I'm calling with exciting news. Based on early indicators, we're expediting the second printing of your book. And there's more. We'd like to discuss a potential follow-up focused specifically on mother-daughter financial dynamics. The pre-orders are already exceeding our most optimistic projections." As she continued outlining opportunities, a book tour, speaking engagements, potential partnerships with women's organizations, I gazed out at the New York skyline. At 70, I wasn't wrapping up my story. I was beginning a new chapter entirely. And for perhaps the first time since Richard's death, I felt truly, vibrantly alive, not defined by my relationships to others, but by my own voice, my own purpose, my own reclaimed power. The invisible woman had not only become visible, she was shining. 8 months after my daughters stole my credit card on my 70th birthday, I stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Portland Hilton, surveying a sea of attentive faces. Women of all ages filled the room, but predominantly those with silver hair, lines of experience etched around their eyes, and expressions of recognition as I shared my journey. "Financial independence isn't just about money," I explained, my voice confident in a way that still occasionally surprised me. "It's about reclaiming your worth after decades of putting everyone else first. It's about remembering that you matter, not just as a mother, grandmother, or caregiver, but as a woman with dreams, talents, and wisdom all your own." The book tour had brought me to 12 cities in as many weeks. My publisher had been astounded by the response. Venues consistently filled beyond capacity, media coverage expanding beyond morning shows to include major newspapers and magazines. "Boundary Barbara sparks national movement," one headline had declared. Another called my book "The Silent Generation's Manifesto for Visibility." The attention was still uncomfortable at times, but I'd learned to focus on the message rather than the messenger, on the women finding their voice rather than on my own unexpected platform. As I concluded my formal remarks and opened the floor for questions, a woman in the third row raised her hand. She appeared to be in her mid-60s, elegantly dressed, but with hands that trembled slightly as she held the microphone. "Mrs. Collins, your book changed my life," she began, her voice wavering with emotion. "I've been supporting my son financially for 15 years, paying his mortgage, his car payments, even his vacations. After reading your story, I finally told him no more." She paused, tears welling. "He hasn't spoken to me in 6 weeks. Did I do the right thing? Will he ever come back?" The raw pain in her question resonated throughout the room. I stepped from behind the podium, approaching the edge of the stage to address her directly. "What's your name?" I asked gently. "Margaret," she replied. "Margaret, first let me say how much courage it took to make that decision. You did the right thing, not just for yourself, but ultimately for your son as well." I glanced toward the back of the room, where Jennifer and Stephanie stood quietly observing. "I can't promise your son will respond as my daughters eventually did. Everyone's journey is different, but I can tell you this. What you've lost is not a healthy relationship. It's a dynamic of dependence that was preventing both of you from living authentically." Margaret nodded, wiping away tears. "And one more thing," I added. "You are not alone in this room. Look around you. Every woman here has her own version of this story, of giving until depletion, of wondering if boundaries mean abandonment. We're walking this path together." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. Several women reached out to touch Margaret's shoulder in solidarity. The remainder of the Q&A session followed a similar pattern, women sharing painful stories of financial exploitation by adult children, siblings, or partners. Others offering advice from further along the journey of reclaiming their independence. When the formal event concluded, I sat at a table signing books and speaking briefly with each person who approached. Some simply wanted to express gratitude. Others needed a moment of connection with someone who understood their struggle. All seemed to leave standing a little straighter, as if permission to value themselves was itself a gift worth carrying home. As the line finally dwindled, my daughters approached the signing table. They had flown in from Portland specifically for this event, the final stop on my tour, and a homecoming of sorts. "You were wonderful, Mom," Stephanie said, embracing me warmly. "That woman Margaret, I wanted to tell her it gets better, that relationships can heal after boundaries are set." "Maybe you should," I suggested. "She's still over by the refreshment table. Your perspective might mean more to her than mine." Stephanie glanced in Margaret's direction, then nodded. "I think I will." She squeezed my hand before walking away. Jennifer remained, helping me gather my notes and the small gifts some attendees had pressed into my hands. Cards, bookmarks, even a hand-knitted scarf from a woman who'd said my book had given her warmth when she felt coldest. 9 months ago, if someone had told me my mother would become a national voice for women's financial independence, I'd have thought they were delusional, Jennifer remarked, her tone light but her eyes serious. Yet here we are. Here we are indeed, I agreed, watching as Stephanie engaged in animated conversation with Margaret across the room. "How are you feeling about all this?" Jennifer considered the question thoughtfully. "Proud, humbled, occasionally still embarrassed when someone recognizes your name and asks if I'm that Jennifer." She gave a rueful smile, "but mostly grateful for the wake-up call we needed, even if it came in the form of hotel security and viral humiliation." I touched her hand. "And how are things with the financial counselor?" "Ongoing," she admitted. "I still struggle sometimes, especially with impulse spending when I'm stressed. But I haven't asked anyone for money in 9 months, and I've built up 3 months of emergency savings. Baby steps. Important ones," I noted, recognizing the significance of this progress for Jennifer, who had lived paycheck to paycheck despite her substantial income for as long as I could remember. As we prepared to leave, the event coordinator approached with an elegant envelope. "This was delivered for you during the event, Mrs. Collins. The messenger said it was important." Inside was an invitation printed on heavy cardstock. "The Regional Association of Financial Advisors requests the honor of your presence at our annual gala this Saturday evening, where you will be presented with the Eleanor Roosevelt Award for Empowerment." "Another accolade for the collection," Jennifer observed, reading over my shoulder. "Your credenza is running out of space." I smiled at her teasing. The various awards and recognitions that had come my way in recent months meant far less to me than the real changes in my family and the women I'd been able to help. "The gala's this Saturday?" I confirmed, checking the date. "But that's your birthday," Jennifer finished. "Your 71st. We know. My birthday. The day that had triggered everything. Last year's forgotten celebration leading to my daughter's theft, my awakening, and the cascade of changes that followed. "We actually have plans for your birthday," Stephanie announced, rejoining us after her conversation with Margaret. "If you're willing to skip the fancy gala." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of plans?" "It's a surprise," Jennifer replied with uncharacteristic playfulness. "But I promise it doesn't involve stolen credit cards or tropical destinations, or social media posts from said tropical destinations," Stephanie added with a self-deprecating grimace. The sisters exchanged a look that suggested detailed planning and shared secrets, another healing sign in their formerly competitive relationship. "All right," I agreed cautiously. "No gala. Birthday surprise it is." When Saturday arrived, I half expected something elaborate given my daughter's naturally dramatic tendencies. Instead, Jennifer picked me up in her sensibly downsized car, the luxury SUV having been sold as part of her debt repayment plan, and drove me to my favorite park overlooking the Willamette River. There, in a secluded picnic area, I found a small gathering of those closest to me: Stephanie, Gordon, Grace, and several friends from church. A simple banner read, "Happy 71st birthday, Barbara," and a modestly decorated cake sat on the center table. "We thought about something bigger," Jennifer explained as we approached. "But then we realized what you'd appreciate most is quality time with people who truly see you." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, recognizing my preference for meaning over spectacle, touched me deeply. As we settled around the picnic table, Stephanie cleared her throat. "Mom, before we eat, we have something to share with you." Jennifer nodded, reaching into her purse to retrieve an envelope similar to the one containing the gala invitation. "This is your real birthday present." Inside, I found legal documents with a familiar letterhead, Gordon's law firm. As I scanned the contents, my breath caught. "The Barbara Collins Foundation for Financial Dignity," I read aloud. "Established with an initial endowment of—" I looked up in shock at the figure listed. "It's the full amount we owed you, plus interest," Jennifer explained. "We've both been working extra jobs for months to make it happen." And we've structured it as a proper nonprofit, Stephanie added. With you as the chairperson, of course. The foundation will provide education and resources to older women facing financial exploitation, especially from family members. Gordon smiled from across the table. They came to me with the idea 3 months ago. Been working on it ever since. Proper legal structure, mission statement, strategic plan. They've done it right, Barbara. I looked from the documents to my daughters' faces, finding no trace of their former entitlement or manipulation. Instead, I saw 2 women who had traveled their own difficult journey alongside mine, from entitled takers to genuine givers. I struggled to find words adequate to the moment. This is the most meaningful gift I could imagine. There's more, Stephanie said, pulling out a folder. We've already lined up partnerships with 3 senior centers and 2 community colleges to provide workshops, and we've recruited volunteer financial advisors willing to offer pro bono consultations. The foundation's first major event is already scheduled, Jennifer added, a conference called Invisible No More, Financial Empowerment After 60. We've secured sponsorships to keep registration fees minimal. As they continued outlining their vision, the very practical steps they'd taken to translate my experience into a resource for others, I felt a profound sense of completion. My daughters hadn't just acknowledged their past behavior, they had transformed it into something redemptive. The birthday celebration continued with cake and conversations, laughter and a few tears. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the park, I found myself sitting slightly apart, watching my newly reconfigured family with a sense of wonder. Grace joined me on the bench. Quite a difference from last year's birthday, she observed. In every possible way, I agreed. Richard would be bursting with pride, she said softly. Not just about your success, but about the women your daughters are becoming. I nodded, feeling his presence as I often did in moments of significance. The hardest part was believing I deserved better, I confessed. After decades of putting everyone else first, it felt almost selfish to prioritize my own dignity. And now? Grace prompted. I watched as Jennifer and Stephanie worked together to pack up the remains of our picnic, their interaction easy and supportive, in a way I'd rarely witnessed before. Now I understand that dignity isn't something you earn or deserve, I replied. It's something you claim. And in claiming it for myself, I somehow helped my daughters claim it too. Grace patted my hand. From credit card theft to nonprofit foundation in 1 year. Not bad for a woman who thought her meaningful life was behind her at 70. I laughed at her characteristic bluntness. Not bad at all. As we prepared to leave, Stephanie approached with my purse and jacket. One more thing, Mom. We've booked you a spa day tomorrow. Massage, facial, the works. And before you worry about the cost, it's all within budget. No credit cards were harmed in the making of this birthday. The gentle self-mockery in her tone, acknowledging past mistakes without shame or defensiveness, was perhaps the clearest sign of her growth. Thank you, I said simply, embracing her. For everything. Driving home with Jennifer, I watched Portland's familiar landscape slide past my window. So much had changed in a year, yet the city remained the same. A reminder that transformation often happens internally before it manifests in the world around us. I never thanked you properly, Jennifer said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. For what? For having the courage to say no, for letting us face consequences. She kept her eyes on the road, but her voice held uncharacteristic vulnerability. It would have been easier to keep enabling us, to maintain the status quo. Easier in the moment, I acknowledged, but devastating in the long run. For all of us, she nodded. I think about that hotel manager sometimes. How humiliating it was to be treated like criminals. How entitled we felt to your money, your support, your endless giving. She glanced at me briefly. That version of myself seems like a stranger now. Growth often feels that way, I observed. The person we were becomes unrecognizable to the person we're becoming. As Jennifer pulled into my driveway, I noticed my garden blooming in the early evening light. The roses Richard had planted now thriving under my care. New varieties I'd added creating a tapestry of color and fragrance. Like my life, the garden had evolved, honoring what came before while making room for fresh growth and possibility. Happy birthday, Mom, Jennifer said as I gathered my things. See you tomorrow at the foundation meeting? 9 o'clock at Gordon's office? I'll be there, I promised, marveling at my daughter making plans that involved responsibility and giving rather than taking. Inside my home, the modest house I'd chosen to keep despite my ability to afford more. I set down my purse and kicked off my shoes with a contented sigh. On the mantel, Richard's photo seemed to smile with particular warmth. "You were right," I told his image, "about the girls needing limits. About me needing to stand up for myself. About everything, really." 1 year ago, I had been a woman diminished by others' expectations and my own reluctance to claim space. Today, I stood tall in my truth, not just for myself, but for the countless women finding courage through my story. At 71, my life wasn't winding down. It was expanding in ways I could never have imagined. The credit card theft that had broken my heart on my 70th birthday had ultimately led to healing deeper than the original wound. And in that healing, messy, difficult, and ongoing as it was, I had discovered what it truly meant to be visible, not just seen, but known, not just valued for what I could give, but respected for who I was. The invisible woman had stepped into the light and found, to her surprise, that she had been luminous all along. 1 year to the day after I blocked my daughter's stolen credit card in Hawaii, I stood before a packed auditorium at Portland Community College. The banner behind me read, "The Invisible Woman's Revolution, First Annual Conference on Financial Dignity After 60. Nearly 300 women filled the seats, some accompanied by daughters or friends, others alone, but quickly forming connections with those nearby. "Welcome," I began, my voice steady and sure in a way that no longer surprised me. 1 year ago today, I made a decision that changed everything. I chose dignity over dependence, boundaries over exploitation, self-respect over invisibility. As I shared the now familiar outlines of my story, I noticed many women nodding in recognition. Others dabbed at tears. A few reached for the hands of daughters sitting beside them, some in solidarity, others perhaps in apology or new understanding. "Today isn't about my journey," I continued. "It's about yours. Every woman in this room has her own version of becoming invisible, of having her worth diminished, her boundaries violated, her generosity exploited. This conference is designed to give you practical tools for reclaiming your power, financially and personally." I introduced our keynote speaker, a renowned financial advisor specializing in women's economic security, then took my seat in the front row between Jennifer and Stephanie. Both had taken personal days from work to help run the conference, overseeing everything from registration to the workshop schedule. "Nervous?" Jennifer whispered as applause greeted the keynote speaker. "Grateful," I corrected. "A year ago, I couldn't have imagined this." Throughout the day, I moved between sessions, a workshop on recognizing financial manipulation, a panel discussion featuring women who had successfully disentangled from economically abusive relationships, practical sessions on budgeting and investing after 60. The foundation we had established was providing everything free of charge, from materials to the boxed lunches served in the college courtyard. During the lunch break, I found myself approached by a woman clutching my book, its pages marked with colorful, sticky notes. "Mrs. Collins," she began hesitantly, "I've been wanting to thank you. Your story gave me courage when I needed it most." "I'm so glad," I replied warmly. "What's your name?" "Ellen Martinez. I'm 73. She straightened her shoulders with visible pride. 3 months ago, I finally told my son he couldn't live in my guest house rent-free anymore. He's 46 and perfectly capable of supporting himself." "That must have been difficult," I acknowledged. She nodded. "He didn't speak to me for weeks, called me heartless, said I was choosing money over family." Her eyes grew bright with unshed tears. "But last week, he signed a lease on his own apartment. And yesterday, he brought me flowers and said—" Her voice caught. "He said he was sorry for taking advantage of me for so long." I squeezed her hand. How wonderful that he found his way to that realization. "It's because I held firm," Ellen said. "Your book helped me understand that my enablement wasn't actually helping him. That real love sometimes means saying no." As she moved on, I spotted Stephanie deep in conversation with a group of younger women, daughters who had accompanied their mothers to the conference. From her animated gestures and their attentive expressions, I could tell she was sharing our family's journey from her perspective. Stephanie had emerged as an unexpected ambassador for adult children, learning to stand on their own feet. Her volunteer work at the senior center had evolved into a part-time paid position, coordinating intergenerational programs. She'd even started writing a blog called Recovering Financial Dependent that had garnered significant attention. Jennifer's transformation had been equally remarkable, though different in character. Always more reserved than her sister, she had channeled her marketing expertise into the foundation's outreach efforts. The strategic plan she'd developed had attracted significant donors, allowing us to expand programming beyond our initial projections. More importantly, both daughters were now completely self-supporting. The trust distributions remained redirected to the foundation, by their choice rather than my mandate. Jennifer had downsized her lifestyle considerably, moving from her luxury downtown condo to a modest apartment closer to her office. Stephanie had taken on a roommate to share expenses, something she would have considered beneath her a year earlier. Our relationships had evolved as well. The mandatory therapy sessions had concluded months ago, but we continued meeting regularly, sometimes just for dinner, other times to work on foundation business. The artificial formality that had characterized our early reconciliation had gradually given way to a more authentic connection, one based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. As the conference reconvened for afternoon sessions, I slipped away briefly to a quiet corner of the campus. My phone showed 3 missed calls from my publisher, likely about the paperback release scheduled for next month, and an email from Good Morning America requesting a follow-up interview for their Where Are They Now segment. The attention still felt surreal at times. Boundary Barbara had evolved from viral video subject to recognized advocate for women's financial dignity. My book had spent 15 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. I'd been quoted in articles about economic abuse, featured in a documentary on women's financial independence, and named to several Women Over 60 Making a Difference lists. None of it had been planned or sought. All of it had emerged from that single moment of clarity on my 70th birthday. The recognition that I deserved better than exploitation disguised as family obligation. As I prepared to return to the conference, a text message appeared from Grace. Local news is covering your event. Just saw you on Channel 8. So proud of my famous friend. I smiled at her enthusiasm. The media attention was flattering, but secondary to the real measure of success. The women like Ellen Martinez finding their voice, reclaiming their dignity, reshaping their relationships on healthier terms. The afternoon culminated in a panel discussion featuring financial counselors, legal experts, and women sharing personal stories of economic recovery. As moderator, I guided the conversation toward practical steps attendees could take immediately, regardless of their current circumstances. The journey to financial dignity isn't about wealth, noted one panelist, a retired teacher who had recently extricated herself from supporting multiple adult children. It's about autonomy, the freedom to make choices based on your own needs and values, not others' expectations or demands. And it's never too late to begin, added another, a financial advisor specializing in senior women. I have clients who started investing in their 70s and 80s. The question isn't, why bother at my age, but rather, why not claim what remains of my life as fully my own? As the panel concluded to enthusiastic applause, I invited everyone to a closing reception in the college atrium. There, amid refreshments and informal conversation, I watched connections form between women who had arrived as strangers. Phone numbers exchanged, support networks established, resources shared. Jennifer appeared at my side, clipboard in hand. Everything's running smoothly, she reported. We've already got 30 names on the list for next year's conference. Next year, I repeated, the concept still somewhat astonishing. I suppose this has become an annual tradition. More than that, she replied. It's becoming a movement. She wasn't wrong. The ripple effects from my initial boundary setting had expanded far beyond our family, touching lives across the country. Women who had spent decades in the background were stepping forward, claiming space, demanding respect. Did you ever imagine this? I asked, gesturing toward the room full of animated conversation and newfound solidarity. Jennifer shook her head. Honestly? A year ago, I was more concerned with how to explain to my friends why I'd been escorted from a luxury hotel by security. She offered a self-deprecating smile. Talk about missing the bigger picture. As the event wound down, Stephanie joined us, accompanied by Ellen Martinez and several other women eager to share their stories. I listened as they described their own awakening to self-worth, their steps toward financial independence, their evolving family dynamics. The hardest part, one woman confessed, is the guilt. I spent so many years believing that saying no was selfish, that my own needs mattered less than everyone else's. I understand completely, I assured her. That's why community is so important. We need to remind each other that dignity isn't selfishness, that boundaries aren't rejection, that we matter, not just for what we give, but for who we are. As the last attendees departed, my daughters and I remained behind to oversee cleanup and thank the volunteers. The conference had been entirely their vision, conceived, planned, and executed as their gift to me and to the women my story had touched. You two have created something remarkable here, I told them as we gathered our materials. I couldn't be prouder. We had an excellent teacher, Stephanie replied, her expression uncharacteristically serious. Not just in how you handled the Hawaii situation, but in how you've lived this past year with dignity, purpose, and generosity despite everything we put you through. Jennifer nodded in agreement. You could have just cut us off and moved on with your life. Instead, you gave us a path to redemption. Difficult, but possible. That's real love. Their words touched me deeply. The journey had indeed been difficult for all of us. Painful reckonings, uncomfortable truths, the dismantling of long-established patterns. But the women standing before me now bore little resemblance to the entitled daughters who had stolen my credit card a year earlier. As we left the campus, the setting sun bathed Portland in golden light. My daughters headed to their respective cars with promises to meet for our regular Sunday dinner in 2 days. I lingered a moment, watching them walk away. Independent women who had found their own feet after years of leaning on mine. A quote from my book came to mind, words I had written during those early uncertain days of establishing boundaries. The greatest gift we can give our children is not endless support, but the expectation and belief that they can support themselves. The past year had proven the truth of that statement beyond anything I could have imagined. At home that evening, I settled into Richard's old armchair with a cup of tea, reflecting on the day's events. On the coffee table lay a framed photo taken at my 71st birthday. Jennifer, Stephanie, and me laughing together in the park, genuine joy illuminating our faces. Beside it sat the advance copy of my second book, set for release in 3 months. Beyond Boundaries, Rebuilding Relationships After Financial Dependence. My phone chimed with a text from Gordon. Congratulations on a successful conference. Richard would be bursting with pride. I smiled, knowing it was true. My late husband had always seen more in me than I saw in myself, had recognized a strength and resilience I'd only fully discovered in the past year. We did it, Richard, I whispered to his memory. We raised daughters who could find their way back to integrity, even after losing their path. And I finally found my voice, even after decades of silence. As night fell outside my window, I felt a profound sense of completion. The journey that had begun with betrayal and heartbreak on my 70th birthday had transformed not only my life, but the lives of countless others. The pain had been necessary, the catalyst for change too long deferred. At 71, I had become not just visible but luminous, a woman standing fully in her power, surrounded by daughters who had found their own, offering light to others still struggling in shadows. The invisible woman's revolution continued, far beyond my individual story. Women who had spent decades diminishing themselves were reclaiming their worth, their voice, their rightful place. And I had the extraordinary privilege of witnessing their awakening, of sharing in their journey toward the dignity we all deserved. As I prepared for bed that night, I paused before my mirror, seeing not just the silver-haired woman reflected there, but all she represented: resilience, wisdom, the courage to begin again, regardless of age or circumstance. Happy anniversary, I told my reflection softly. Here's to boundaries, dignity, and second acts that outshine the first. And somewhere, in the stillness of my heart, I felt Richard's answering smile. The end. If this story touched your heart or inspired you to set boundaries to protect your dignity, subscribe to the channel now so you won't miss more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Your city might be small, but your courage is huge. Together, we're showing the world that it's never too late to bloom and become the visible, respected woman you always deserved to be.